Hello everybody. In today's video, I'll be making a basic slim 3-pocket wallet. This is the wallet that I've personally carried for the last 5 years. I primarily use it to carry my IDs and debit card, insurance information, and a little bit of folded cash every now and then. If I need to keep a receipt, I usually tuck it into the outside pocket. The wallet on the left is a slightly larger design with pockets wide enough to also hold business cards, since they are slightly wider than credit cards. And yes, these both started out as the same natural veg tan color. Stick around and I'll show you how I made one, start to finish. I begin by drawing a center line down the middle of the paper. This will become my fold line. In order to leave enough clearance for the wallet to fold closed when it's full of cards, I want to leave at least 3/4 of an inch between the tops of the cards. I'll be using roughly 1 inch, so I offset from the fold line 1/2 of an inch. And now I'll trace around a business card and credit card template so that I can start to determine my stitch line offsets. To make sure the pockets are large enough to hold multiple cards, I'm offsetting my stitch line 1/4 of an inch. And then I offset roughly 3/16 of an inch to indicate the outer edge of the wallet. I'm using a 1-inch radius on the corners of the wallet. I'm adding a curve to the top edge of my pocket pieces. To begin, I draw a center line down the middle of the pocket, and then I'll sketch in my curve. When you extract your pattern pieces onto your pattern material, cut 1/2 of the curve, and then fold it over and trace the cut line onto the other half of the pattern piece. That will give you a mirror image of your curve. I usually transfer my patterns to heavy cardstock, but today I'm using translucent vellum, and I believe it's 65-pound cover weight. The leather I'm using today was Springfield Leather special purchase. It's an oil tan leather called Farmhand, and the thickness is 4 to 5 ounce. It was on sale for $3.99 a foot, but it's discontinued now, unfortunately. I'm tracing around the perimeter of my pattern pieces with a scratch-awl. This is just a Cobalt branded awl that I purchased from one of the local big box stores, and I ground down the tip to make it much shorter than it was originally. I'm using a Fiskars rotary cutter to cut the straight edges of all of the leather pieces. And the straight edge I'm using is called a Duro Edge DR safety ruler, but this particular model doesn't seem to be available anywhere online. To cut the curved edges of the top of my pocket pieces, I'm using a round knife from Wickett Leather. It's their Master Tools 4 7/8 inch knife. I'm putting 3 pockets on this wallet. You could easily add a 4th pocket by adding 1 more pocket to the outside of the wallet. Or you could just use 2 interior pockets with no outside pockets. To assemble the wallet, I begin by marking the top edges of the pockets onto the body panel, and then I'll scuff up the grain surface of the body panel to help the contact cement adhere to the leather better. I'm just using my scratch-awl to do this, but there are dedicated scuffing tools that you can buy. Sandpaper works as well. I'm edging the top edge of my pocket pieces with a number 0 edger from Wickett Leather, and then I'll burnish the top edges of the pocket pieces. I have the leather propped up on a scrap piece of leather. The leather is too thin and the edger drags on the table surface. It makes it harder to edge thin leather, so propping it up like this really helps. To glue the pieces together, I'm using Weldwood's original formula contact cement. It's a little cheaper than some of the dedicated leather adhesives, and I can buy it locally at the big box store. For now, I'll just apply contact cement to the outside of the body panel. Once I attach the outer pocket piece, I can flip the body panel over and apply contact cement to the inside of the wallet. Just like we did on the outside, I'll mark the inside of the body panel to indicate where the glue goes for the pocket pieces. And then I'll apply contact cement. If the flesh side of your body panel has been smoothed by the tannery, you may need to scuff up the surface just a little bit. This leather has just a regular rough flesh side. There's no smoothing gum or anything applied to the interior. If you wanted the inside of your wallet to be smooth, you could go ahead and apply gum trag or some other chemical prior to assembly, but be sure to scuff up the glue areas first prior to assembly. Once the pieces are stuck together, I'll hammer the edges to create a tighter bond. And now I'll trim the edges flush with my round knife. I'm using a circle template to scribe a 1-inch radius on all 4 corners of the wallet, and then I'll cut the corners with my round knife. To sand the edges, I'm using a small sanding drum attached to my drill press. I'm rounding the edges of the wallet with a combination of my CS Osborne number 125 size 3 common edge beveler and my Weaver Leather size 0 edger. I'm sewing the wallet on my Cobra Class 4 from Leather Machine Company. The size thread I'm using is 277 bonded nylon thread, and I have that same thickness in the top and the bottom. My machine is set up for sewing holsters and belts, since that makes up the majority of what I produce. When sewing thinner items on a machine like this, you have to be careful to make sure the leather doesn't bend downward into the lower feed dog, because the lower feed dog hole is enlarged to accommodate larger needles. If the leather is allowed to bend downward, the needle can exit the leather at an angle, possibly exiting out of the side of the piece. To avoid this, make sure you allow plenty of distance between the stitch line and the edge of the leather to allow both edges of the leather to be supported by the lower feed dog. Unfortunately, my stitch line was a little too close, and this happened to me on this wallet. I was able to salvage the wallet by cutting and attaching a new pocket piece. Using a new needle and giving your cement plenty of time to cure will also help minimize problems like this. Back stitching on thin leather with thick thread like I am using usually results in unattractive knots on the back side of the leather. So I'm using just a hand stitching needle and back stitching by hand with traditional saddle stitching methods. This adds quite a bit of time to the sewing process, but it's well worth it in my opinion. Of course, hand stitching small items like this is always a good option, but if you're going to machine sew and end up with ugly knots on the back side of the leather, this is a good option to keep in mind. And now I'll snip and melt the ends of the thread to help keep them from pulling out of the leather. This is the point in time where I removed and replaced the pocket panel that I mentioned previously, but I didn't film that part. I'm dyeing the edges with Phoebing's Pro Dye, and the color is dark brown, and I'm using a small wooden dauber to apply it. To burnish the edges, I'm using a combination of my wooden hand burnisher and my Cocobolo drill press burnisher, and a 50-50 mixture of beeswax and paraffin. Then I'll buff the edges with a canvas or denim cloth to remove the excess and polish the edges. That's all there is to it. This entire build took about 1 hour to complete, including creating the pattern. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see future videos, please be sure to subscribe and ring that bell. I'll have links to some of the products I use in the description down below, as well as links to my website for patterns, acrylic templates, holsters, and other cool stuff. Take care, and thank you for watching.